Good morning. We are at the Economic Development, Historic Preservation, and Environmental Conservation Committee meeting, December 2nd. And I guess we will start with the roll call.
So I have Seth Goldstein online, John Delarada, Dennis Brennan, Elena Finnan, Jamie Cotuni, Elizabeth Greenwood, Matt Yetto, Dean Fody, Kevin Walsh, Dart Schreier.
Very good. And I understand we don't have any public comments.
I did not receive any.
Okay, and that brings us to the minutes of November 4th, 2022. If we've all had an opportunity to look at those, I will make a motion to accept.
One second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And that passes unanimously, and that brings us to the resolutions.
So for resolutions, we have so we lost another one of our comprehensive plan committee members. He was just very honest with us and didn't think he'd be able to put the work in. So we appreciated him letting us know. He was the representative from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Jamie was able to get another Zoning Board of Appeals member, so we're putting forth a resolution to appoint Keith Ferry to the comprehensive plan committee.
Keith is back.
Yeah, he was on there. The next thing we have is the public hearing on local law E pertaining to the vacant building registration that was introduced in the November meeting. The public hearing was called for. The resolution C, I'm recommending that we also adopt the code at the same meeting. It's very similar code to what we adopted about 2 years ago, and we didn't get a lot of public comment on it then. These amendments really just make it more in line with the New York State law, so we don't expect for it to be particularly controversial. So I would recommend, just so that we can get going on some of the vacant home type of fixing up in the community, is that we do both the public hearing and a potential resolution to adopt the local law.
Does that resolution help us at all with the recently approved zombie program?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
tailored. Yeah,
Very good.
so they go in hand, and really you can't start the zombie
Yes.
until we've updated our code.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, let's do that right away.
And then the last one that I have is both the Tree Council and Conservation Advisory Council are down a couple people. I may have more resumes, but for the time being, at least Jeff Corbin submitted his resume for Tree Council, which was attached to your email, and Vicki Michaela submitted her resume for Conservation Advisory Council. I am excited about both. Jeff Corbin has worked in town before. He's really amazing. He's very knowledgeable about conservation measures, and I do think that he would be a really great addition to the Tree Council. Vicki is one of the people that heads our quietness unit and is trying to convert people over to electric leaf blowers. So I do think they're very good fits for both of the committees.
Excellent.
Does anybody have any other resolution thing? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Planning board update. Since our last meeting, some actions that we've taken, Momentum Performance Materials received their area variances from the ZBA, facade signs, Empire Drive, the 2-lot minor subdivision was approved. Over at Mansion Square, we're going to do business that's Cool Vibe Smoke Shop. We put that tenant change in their signage. I believe they're looking at a January 1 opening. I talked to the applicant. And on Troy Road, the Holocaust Memorial, we had a site plan update to confirm and signage to be temporary and long-term signage that we approved for that. Things that we're working on, of course, is the Balltown Road, Ritmo Apartments, the old Aqueduct Animal Hospital. The application is for 2 new 6-unit apartment buildings. We're going to need to make our recommendations to the ZBA at our next meeting, which is December 12th. We're working on the Mohawk Golf Club application for 22 units. That's 11 townhomes, and that's in the sketch plan review process right now. And a minor thing, the Hillside those apartments, we finally came through their signage. We'll have a resolution approving that at our next meeting. Things we're waiting on, Rivers Ledge to redesigning the building, the senior building, senior apartments. Trinity Baptist Church, we're waiting on them to update their site plan, but they're close to approval. Union Street, we had an application, or at least a discussion about conversion of the building up there to a mixed use. We're waiting on the applicant. We made some suggestions, but we're waiting on the applicant there. And then finally, River Road, Kells Farm, we're waiting for what the long-term sign would look like, and then we'll take action on a temporary sign and the long-term sign, but that's going to require town board for the sign to be the right way. So that's it.
Was the redesign of Rivers Ledge, was that at the behest of the planning board, or is that something
I
they
think
want?
Laura knows more about it. I believe it was cost. When they went and
Oh.
actually, with all the things they had to do, it's way over the top. So they're looking to see if they can trim back on some costs.
Reduce some units, not have underground parking, things like that.
Oh, okay.
Just double what they were expecting the building to be. So, yeah.
All right. Everything else seems to be on schedule, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. The ones that Kevin highlighted that we put in your packet, because you may hear comments on them, which is, often like we like to give you a heads up, is probably the use variance on Balltown Road. Like that'll get notified in December, so you may expect to be able to hear about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Mohawk Golf Club townhomes. It's up on the screen right now. It's a work in progress, but
Is that in front of the planning board?
it's in front of the planning board. We're already getting a fair number of people commenting and coming to the planning board. So if you got any questions, feel free to reach out.
That's a significant amount of area variances. I plus track the number, probably in the 60s, 70 area variances required.
So we put it in a letter that we have concerns too about, they tie into a sewer line that's already at capacity, so they're gonna have to do a downstream sewer analysis. We were concerned about the low pressure zone, although I don't know if they've talked to you since I've talked to you, but they found like a 12-inch main running through there or something.
Take a look at that, but it's in a high pressure zone,
Yeah.
and we have limited storage on that zone.
What does that mean, a high pressure zone?
We have two more pressure zones in the town. One is a medium pressure, one's our high. Our high pressure zone is served by the 400,000 gallon elevated tank that you see from Balltown Road.
Mhm.
The medium pressure zone is fed by 1 million gallon tanks that are lower. So the amount of storage that we have in the 400,000 gallon tank, it just has to be looked at to make sure that we have adequate capacity. And I think there was some issue on the existing sewer. I mentioned that.
Yeah, because it drains into the line that goes to, I believe, River Road, right? Did we decide that?
I have to look at it.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there for me.
So there's some potential utility things that we have to come through. The last, I'd say, planning board, the access point was a big discussion point at the planning board, so they're requesting looking at other accesses. Yeah, so it's got a lot of work, but I would expect that you may hear about it. So it's there. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us.
And I might have missed it. I didn't catch anything on the broken in.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, you can go ahead.
I was going to say, it's not for us until it makes it through legal review.
All right.
And I mean, we finished up on the temporary seating. My understanding is we were done with that. That season is over with. So this is a new application for a long term. And once it gets through later, we'll look at it.
There's some legal impediments that are likely to lead to not allow it to go forward as it currently stands.
All right.
Yeah, I would say we're getting really close to being able to have a full memo. Been working on it pretty hard over the last couple of weeks, and I would expect that before the next meeting, we're going to have the answer.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. To the zoning board.
So the zoning board only has one case for December, but it's the biggie that Kevin just touched on, the use variance for 2721 Balltown Road. So that'll get a lot of attention there, December 20, somewhere in there. It's the last meeting in December for the town.
Have you heard from any neighbors at all? Anybody? On that?
Well, we typically don't hear from them until we do the mail out, and the mail out will go out pretty shortly. But it's gonna be next Friday.
All right.
Like town board is like December 13th, like planning board is December 12th, but zoning board is the week after, so it's like December 22nd or something like that. So they won't get their mail outs until 10 days ahead of time. For the grants update, we received the check from NYSERDA for the LED lights, so I think Beth and Janet deposited that, it's good to go. And then just to update you, the construction on Upper Union Street is in progress. They completed the sidewalks on the St. Cattery side of Union Street, and I believe they're getting very close to completing the sidewalks on the south side. They may already be done. I was out yesterday. But they did want to move St. Joseph's Crossing to the spring. They're going to try and get it done this year if they could. But the asphalt plants are shutting down and things, so they didn't think they would be able to put that in the spring. So we'll not put the signs up until we need to. So we would expect to see them in the spring. Interesting. I'll tie this right into Complete Streets, which comes up next when we were meeting with the schools Wednesday. The schools specifically said how important, a couple people who worked at the schools said how important the St. Joseph Crossing was going to be to them, and they were very supportive of it, like super excited about it.
No kidding.
Yeah, I told them that it had to go to spring, and they're like, yeah, we understand, we just can't wait for it to get built.
Wow.
And I know you hear that all the time. I would have liked to get it in. I mean, today it seems like, why aren't they putting it in? But I think they're still working on Upper Union, so. Yeah, so we met, so Complete Streets Committee met with the schools yesterday, or it wasn't yesterday, it was Wednesday. And it was very exciting. We were showing the schools some of the things we were doing, like potentially putting in the Plum Street sidewalk, and they were very encouraged by that, potentially willing to put in their part of the Plum Street sidewalk. They're building like connections that we are going to make or plan to make in the future into connections that they can make or plan to make in the future. Really good meeting. It was very, just a great way for them to know what projects we're trying to make for Safe Routes to School and then what they can do. You know, a lot of it, again, you know, still doesn't have a lot of funding. The Plum Street sidewalk has funding. They can probably fund their half of the Plum Street sidewalk. Couple other little things. The bigger projects we'll have to coordinate with them later on when we get funding. But it's nice to have everybody sitting at the table, kind of on the same page with Complete Streets. So
When do we think Plum Street will be started?
well, we did have to pull it from the award this year. We didn't have enough money this year. But we're hoping that we'll be able to put it out again next year.
So who did you meet with? You know, who was at the school
So
board side?
there was the new superintendent, Carl Momenthi, really nice. I like him a lot. And then his maintenance guys, the head of the maintenance, and then a couple people who are, I think, pretty high up in the administration, potentially supportive of Complete Streets, and then their engineer that, you know, King and Tang Architects, because they worked some of the connections into a potential plan. So
Nobody from school board though?
no, I don't. You know, I'm not amazing about those ones,
Yeah.
but I don't think so.
Okay,
I wouldn't necessarily recognize them,
right,
but
no,
I don't think so.
well, that's good, that's a long time coming, collaborative effort.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, Bill Chapman put it together, and then Jim Levy from Complete Streets and Andrew Millsbach from Complete Streets. Amazing.
Excellent.
So very grateful to the schools for listening. And then another thing that we've been working about, which I had on the last meeting, is that I really just want to draw up a Winnie Road easement for you guys to look at. I tried to do that to this meeting. I wasn't able to, but I'll keep working on it. Any other questions?
What would that mean to do?
Oh, so Winnie Road right now is it's really not a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
But it's a dead end street, and there's kind of a herd path
Yeah, I
that goes. Yeah, but what the easement would do is formalize that trail and allow us to improve it so people could walk from Winnie Road to, it's not Merlin, but it's connected to Merlin.
Yeah.
Which road is it called?
It's the Step Street is Adam Drive.
Yeah,
but
Adam
it's
Drive.
Connected to Valerie Drive.
Valerie. thank
We
you.
have sewer, sanitary sewer and water easement there. So we
Yeah.
have water line and sewer line across.
We looked though, your sanitary sewer and water line easement, it's kind of it's not the easement is specific to the utility.
Yes,
So we would need to expand it to allow for pedestrian access.
yeah, I think that's why it's sort of cleared, because we maintain the easement so that we don't have large growth over the top of our pipe. So it's sort of a virtue.
Yeah,
It's construction across there, made a fence it off because local residents were walking through it and kept saying, you can't go through here, it's dangerous. And they started calling us and wanting to know why we're blocking the walking trail. But it wasn't even, it's just a utility easement.
Yeah, it's just a utility easement right now. But it does allow for anybody on Winnie to safely get into the Valerie Drive and Marlin Drive neighborhood, which then can now get to Flower Hill and then onto the Mohawk Crescent Bike Trail. So it's a really nice connection for a dead end street so that they don't have to go out inside it. Could be done hopefully relatively easily too. So for tree council, again, Jeff Corbin, potential appointment. Do still need more people, so if you guys know of anybody, feel free to send them on. The street tree master plan went to the consultant. The consultant has provided comments back to the tree council, so they're working on that probably this week, and then we'll finalize it later in December. And then I don't really have an update on the tree plantings for the remainder of 2022, 2023, but I do want to meet with Ray and get his take on what is left for this year and then next year.
Okay, the CAC, we did meet with the developers of 2721 Balltown and Golf Course, Mohawk Golf Course. We had fairly detailed discussions between the committee, and I would anticipate the committee will make some recommendations at our upcoming meeting on Wednesday. In addition, we're trying to get the Low Mow initiative, trying to get wildflowers in there, and Schenectady County Soil and Water Conservation actually a machine that can actually plant the seeds. It's supposed to happen this week, but it's probably going to happen next week.
Excellent.
And then for the Climate Smart Communities Task Force, we've been working hard back and forth with DEC on what they need to finalize the signature on that grant. And I just wanted to do a shout out to FN Janet. It used to take me like a month to get insurances from the controller's office, and the last 2 times they've asked for them, I've gotten them like in a day. So it makes my life so much easier, and I very much appreciate that, because essentially all I was waiting for was the insurances, and I said I would get working on it, and I sent an email to Beth and Janet, and I got it back in like an hour. So I don't know why it used to take so long, but I am very thankful for how fast you guys are able to turn that around.
Good deal.
Yeah, it was very helpful to me. And then the other thing that I wanted to tell you guys was at the last meeting, I mentioned that there was the multimodal alternative fuel event at the CETC. I was able to go. It was very interesting. I learned about a new grant program that I was not aware of. It's called the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program, and it's incentivizing like freight level trucks and buses to become alternative fuel. So electric or hydrogen. Well, hydrogen's not really here yet, so it's really just electric. And it's something to look at. Depending on truck weight and class, you can get between $100,000 and $185,000. Well, it's not even a reimbursement. I think they'll pay as long as you do it up front. They'll pay you ahead of time so that you can buy it
For the truck.
for the truck. Yeah, it's something like 85 to 90% of the cost usually,
Oh, boy.
and then
That's a lot.
100,000 to 385,000 for transit buses. I don't know that our senior bus counts as a transit bus. I have no idea.
I don't think it does, because we were looking at a bunch of those.
Did
when we
you?
were looking
Okay.
To buy the bus, and unfortunately, we didn't quite meet the right.
And I think that's the
criteria.
only bus that I know that we have, but I did put that in there just in case our
Yeah.
bus.
That would have been nice.
That would have been ideal.
I know.
Yeah, so that one maybe doesn't apply to us, but on-road trucks, depending on weight, 100,000 to 185,000. And there's also a lot of things to help with adding, pretty fast charging stations and stuff to your facilities. So it's something to look at when we're thinking about upgrading some of our trucks. There's just, it's a much bigger incentive than I realized. And the cool thing about it is that the town doesn't submit any of the grants. The person that you're buying them does. So you essentially say, like, this is what I want, and DEC has licensed the dealers to do this. They know how to do all the work. You say this, and then they'll put everything through for you. The one thing that you do have to do is that you're not allowed to sell the greenhouse gas emitting truck that you are
getting the rebuild.
replacing, you have to scrap it. So, yeah, you have to scrap it. You're taking the,
How do you
combustion
do
truck.
that? How do you?
Yeah, they have rules. Yeah, I mean, you can take the lowest of the barrel, scrap it, and then replace the top of the line, right? But you can't keep a combustion engine on the road. The point of this is you're removing a combustion engine and you're buying.
Makes sense. And by scrapping doesn't necessarily mean throwing away, right? You can break the parts down and recycle or.
Yeah, probably they could recycle it, but they have pretty specific scrapping requirements. This is more remembering some, things that isn't my world really, but like you have to like break the frame on it or something.
Basically make it non-drivable, but you'd
Yeah.
still be able to sell it for scrap value, probably for the metal value for recycling.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm not sure about, but they did say there's two things. You have to remove the engine block and break the frame or something. Yeah. I mean, they're not messing around with their scrapping.
So the downside would be the charging systems, right? Because if they're paying for 80-90% of the vehicle,
Right.
there's no cost to the town except for what? That extra 15%, which should be pretty minimal.
Yeah, it might be too. I mean, I'm just not a great truck. So if you guys want, I send you the link. The presentations are really interesting. But I mean, it just seems to me like with all those incentives, like it's just something to look at. Like
Yeah, that's a lot.
it's a lot, and places are doing it. They had a couple places there that are starting to do it. So,
Oh, that would be helpful to have that information relayed.
yeah,
Is that on the website, the link?
it is on the CDT's website, but I can send it to you guys. I actually have it up on my computer right now.
Excellent.
So, what would you recommend as a good next step? Talking with Ray to identify possible vehicles in his fleet?
Yeah, if he knows, that he's got a couple that are coming up that need replacing, like knowing what the list is that's coming up, seeing if it fits in with here, and then what the infrastructure would
Matt?
be needed to support them. Yeah, same with you
Sorry
guys.
to ignore
Well, it's okay. I'm curious to see what type of trucks they're offering.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A plow truck would eat a battery away in no time.
So, this was a completely different discussion that I've ever heard. It's not like, it wasn't like a complete streets or climates or CAC discussing trucks. It was freight people,
Yeah.
freight people discussing electric vehicles that, that they're using every day, that they're managing these fleets, and it really seems like quite a doable thing. Like, they explained some of the things that you guys brought up, but I don't always understand what they're talking about.
I can see an application where a vehicle is used on a set schedule every day. But the problem I think we have with our fleet is we never know when we'll need our trucks. So
How long
if you
one
finish the end of
time?
the workday, and now it's time to charge it, then you get a water break. And then that truck is dead, and you have to wait for it to charge up before you can take it to address the emergency. But I mean, like
Yeah, you
bus
should,
would be perfect.
I'll send you the link though. They do have those concerns brought up and they do address them, but with the fleets that they're building out, a lot of them do have, they're not really, so they're building huge fleets, but they go out a day and come back. But I mean, you're talking 300-mile ranges, 300, 400-mile ranges.
Yeah, I think the hardest problem is when you're on site. And
Yeah.
the lights are flashing and you're keeping the vehicle warm, to be able to load it and then go back and forth. I think there's a lot of idle time that you lose.
So I asked them about that specifically because both you and the police department tell that to me all the time, and they said that the lights and the heat are not a draw on the battery the way that they used to be. So that they don't see that being a problem. I guess,
Question.
and this was because I'm always pushing the police, the city of Albany to buy electric police cars through this program.
Yeah,
I
the
think that's
Albany
what he
County
said.
Sheriff's Department.
Yeah,
Two
just-
of them,
But
Polestars.
through this program, I think.
Really?
Yes. Oh, no, I think it was. I don't know.
I know I'm waiting for Ford and GM to get
Yeah,
good models for us.
Toyota. Toyota's kind of behind it, focusing on hybrids, Toyota right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, these aren't hybrids. They're hybrids.
These aren't.
Yeah.
That'd be really interesting to see though.
Yeah. It's. I'll send you guys the links.
Did they speak to where the vehicles primarily were made?
I don't remember that. I don't remember that part, but so the way that it works, it's through New York State DEC, and what I was saying is the DEC, like, they license the people who are selling these cars, and there's not that many of them. They didn't seem, there was one guy who spoke, and I think he was talking about where the batteries were made, and they have a battery manufacturing place in California, but then the remainder of the batteries are made in China or somewhere over there somewhere. So, you know,
Did they mention what the charging stations would need to be like? Like, I think John was getting at this. What?
yeah, they
Were
did talk
different
about, no,
That we already have, or?
well, it depends on how fast you want them to charge, because, you know, the new cars, if you have the right charging station in the right car, you can charge them in 20 minutes. But like,
This is probably a different setup though, right, with the freight vehicles?
That's what I wanted to know.
Well, so it really just depends. So it depends on what you need. You know, a lot of them, I don't think they need a 20-minute charge. Like the police department and stuff like that might need a 20-minute charge.
Mhm.
I mean, but you know, you're talking 300, 400 miles in 20 minutes. So, but most of the time you don't need that fast of a charge. So like a lot of these places, they're still just doing the level 2 chargers, which are charging them in, you know, 4 or 5 hours. But, you know, there was an electric skid steer there. I don't know if I have the picture. It might be on my other computer. But there was an electric skid steer that was there, and that thing was still operating off of a lead acid battery because the people, it's right here, because the people who they're trying to appeal to using all electric things are much more comfortable, like with and it works just fine. It still only takes 4 or 5 hours to charge the thing.
So I know we just got recently, in the last year or so, bought a floor cleaner, which is a large floor. It's like a small, it's about the size of a forklift. And the charging unit for that alone, we had to update some of the platforms inside the building. 1 or 2 of these would be fine, but if you start charging an entire fleet, you're gonna have to upgrade the service.
They did talk about upgrading services. They did.
Would they cover that cost too?
So there's different grants for upgrading like your I don't know how to zoom this in. But it's really tiny. I'll send it to you guys. But that's the all electric skid steer over there. And then this is the actual webinar recording right here that I'll send to you guys. I don't know. I can't seem to zoom in on it, but it was cool.
Are they
Different
looking at
grants to do infrastructure.
How about fire apparatus? Are we looking to that as well?
Wasn't specifically addressed there. I don't know about that. Yeah. And I mean, they're talking about everything from, you know, like, you know, pickup trucks to 18-wheelers. Like, and the 18-wheelers, I mean, they're talking like 80,000 pounds of, you know, electric vehicle or light. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the difference between a Class D and a Class E and a Class F truck. I have no idea. But they have like a big chart that shows, you know, which trucks, how much weight, what the incentives are, you know, and it's pretty cool. And you don't have to do that much. I mean, you have to scrap a car, but the dealer does all of that.
Well, if they're handing them out for free,
I mean,
look into.
basically,
Does it have to be a replacement for an existing vehicle, or can it just be a new purchase?
it has to be a replacement because you have to scrap a commercial.
Get the
Yeah.
old,
Mhm.
yeah, carbon.
It kind of reminded me of, do you remember the program the federal government did where they were scrapping the
Cars.
old cars? Yeah, and they were literally just trying to get the ones that were putting the most air pollution into off the road. Yeah, that was like, I'll pay you for your really old car that doesn't, that the emissions are terrible on.
So the bottom of our fleet vehicles, Matt, what's their resale value? I guess that's what we'd be losing.
Yeah, it all depends on what type of vehicle. We have a Freightliner truck that's 1996. So they have a very, larger vehicles have a much longer life.
Yeah. So that resale value, I mean, is it tens of thousands of dollars or it's not
At that
hundreds,
point, yeah, it wouldn't be hundreds at that point.
maybe 10 or 20?
Probably,
Right now,
Yeah.
maybe 30. I mean, just.
Alright.
Yeah, so you would have to do a cost benefit analysis, but my guess is that it almost always comes out as a benefit.
Sure. That's,
Students
that's,
Yeah, more metal, exactly.
Um, So the architectural review board clerk's manning the office this morning. I know they had a meeting a couple of days ago and they were looking at some planning board projects. They still seem to be a really good resource, and I appreciate everything that they do when they look at stuff. I think they could use a couple more people, but I definitely think that they are doing a good job. You want to take the comment?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, as Laura mentioned, we're down 2 members, so I'm really happy Keith is going to be joining us. Keep an eye. Last meeting, we worked on the vision, pulled it together, some key elements of that, and we'll probably finish that up in our next meeting. And the other thing that we've been working on is questions for a public survey. We have a draft, which the committee is going to look at before our next meeting, so we can work upon it.
excellent. All right. Back to building department.
So the last thing that I put in your packets were the forms that the county had helped us make for registering the vacant and zombie properties. Feel free to just page through them. We had a meeting with Susan and David Hogenkamp Wednesday, and you know, we do need to enact the code, but we're starting to work on the logistics of, you know, going out there. So like, just for instance, I'll just show you. When Ken goes out there, he has to do an affidavit of that it's vacant. And so like, he'll just go through here and he'll just say like, what did I see? Like, accumulation of dead vegetation, accumulation of newspapers, flyers, or mail. So he can just go through here and literally like put a check mark on each one of them that he's looking at. And then he attaches pictures, talks about the date. And so these are like types of forms that we'll use when we go out there and we start enforcing. They also provided a form for our clerk when we're doing our notifications, and they've got a pretty nice process for us to follow. But again, we can't actually start following that process until we adopt the law. But we were working on that this week. Kevin kind of already touched on the Rivers Ledge updates, but you know, building wise, they're, I'd say, at least 80% done with their buildings. And the last building permit that they have been working on with us is the rec center, which went out yesterday. So you'll probably see one more foundation go in. I don't know if they'll try and get that in. I think they will. I think you'll see one more foundation go in this before snow flies, potentially.
Are there people living there?
Yeah, lots of people. Oh, I was just talking to Jamie. We're gonna try and do like an email blast with some pictures, just so that people, you know, can see how pretty it is back there.
Sure.
And just kind of talk about how it changed from a junkyard over to this nice
Yeah.
place. But I haven't read it yet. We did talk about it. It's like got one sentence on there so far. I'll try and do that today.
Are we doing a state of the town address?
You know, that is off topic and not on the agenda, but it has been on my own personal agenda.
Thinking about that this morning, and maybe we could have a state of the town economic address or something. Tell her something.
I just put it in hers. Yeah.
Yeah,
We can integrate it.
Yeah.
good
I
idea.
love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
All right.
highlight.
Great minds think alike.
There you go.
And then planning department, I touched base with the person I have working on the quote for the Council Road sidewalk engineering. He is just waiting on his surveying numbers to be able to give that back to us. So I'll let you guys know. He thinks I'll get it back next week. I sent out pretty comprehensive ways for the boards to complete their 4 hours of required training. A lot of them to take advantage of that. I may still pull together some in-person training opportunities in December, because sometimes that don't just get the last stragglers. It worked pretty good last year. And then I attached the 2023 meeting calendar. I don't think there was really anything kind of weird about economic development in there. The Fridays all line up fine. So take a look at those dates. That's how I'll move forward in 2023 unless I hear from you guys. I did want to mention I went to a New York State floodplain managers and stormwater managers conference yesterday in Schoharie. And, you know, we talked about floodplain management, stormwater management, green infrastructure at that organization a lot. But one of the things that I was always paying attention to is that I don't know if you guys noticed potentially when you were voting, but there was an environmental bond that was on there and it did pass. And one of the things that it may provide funding for is, so like floodplain management, stormwater retention and green infrastructure. So that's something that we'd really be paying attention to. And hopefully when that comes down a little bit, when it progresses a little bit farther, we may be able to add, well, we'll stay on top of it and then potentially be able to use some of that for stormwater and green infrastructure. So clean management in the town is key. So that was exciting.
Update since last month.
Dennis?
Well, a couple of things. You can add the historical committee to that list.
Oh, yeah. That's
Are
really
we
good.
ever gonna have an email blast go out
Them?
about not just historical vacancies, or
Oh,
committees?
yes.
Keep talking about it. Other than that, I just recommend you see the latest history article about this weekend. We had a restaurant, speakeasy, and a hangout for Blake's Diamond.
What article's that?
Meetings article in the Gazette. It's in the Your Niskiuna, and then it's in the Gazette on Mondays.
All right.
It's along the river.
Huh?
Was it along the river?
No, it's on Small Town and State where the Fresco Bank is. Building burned down a long time.
And it was a speakeasy.
Supposedly.
Fine.
Surprise.
All right.
And then Dennis and I also reached out to Jim to see if he could comment on there's a couple questions we had for the train station. He hasn't got back to us yet though.
Okay. Is there anything further for the good of the order? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you. So, Dark,
Hey, wait, John.
Yes.
is there a possibility that we can make golf course to land conservation trail?
There was a case in Rarick,